Our work, as I said, is informal. So here I am in Oklahoma City for the first time and talking to a small group of students of our writings and of our recordings. And the first thing that I must say to you is this, that being an informal work, and because we are working from the standpoint that we're not strangers, but fellow citizens, we are all members of one household, we always start our work off by saying good morning or good afternoon, and then you saying it back to me, and so good afternoon to you. Now, the infinite way consists of certain principles of life. There is not a single one of them that I invented or made up. Every single one of them has come down to us from time immemorial, from the beginning of time. From as long as there is recorded history, these principles, sometimes one here and one there, and sometimes two here or two there, these principles have been known. Now, at each appearing of these principles, they have been practiced and found successful, and then been lost to the world. It has not been possible at any time to perpetuate these principles and to keep them going down from age to age. And we still do not know whether it is going to be possible in this age for these principles to go down into future generations. We have no proof of it. You may ask, why, if they have been so successful, has it not been possible for them to survive and go down from age to age? And there are two reasons for it. The first and most important one is that at each appearing of these principles, they have been organized. And in the organization, they have been lost. Why has organizing lost them? For this reason. Spiritual principles must be spiritually discerned. Therefore, it takes a degree of spiritual consciousness to be able to accept these principles. These are not principles that you can accept with the intellect. These are more apt to annoy the intellect. They are more apt to be ridiculous in the sight of the intellect. The things of God are foolishness with man, and the things of man are foolishness with God. And so when a spiritual principle is given to the world, it must, of course, be ridiculed at first. And then it's demonstrated. And then, of course, the whole world wants to demonstrate it and fails, because they are trying to demonstrate it from the standpoint of their humanhood. I can best illustrate that for you by talking for a minute on the subject of prayer. Most people think of prayer in this way. Here I am, a human being, and I'm living my ordinary life, but I'm lacking something, and so I'm going to God and ask Him to give it to me. It may be food or clothing or housing or companionship. It may be a home. It may be abundance. It may be a marriage. It may be a divorce. Whatever it is, I haven't got it, and I'm going to God to get it. And believe it or not, most people in this world believe that it's possible for prayer to be fulfilled that way. The mere fact that it hasn't been fulfilled that way for these thousands of years doesn't stop them from continuing that same old form of prayer in the hopes that probably it will change. They even change churches sometimes in the hope that the prayers in the next church will prove more effective than the ones in the old church. Or they changed the form of prayer, but always the object is the same. Here I am, a human being. I lack something, and I'm going to God and get it. Well, now, of course, I can say to you right now that all that type of prayer is just hopeless delusion. For prayer to be fulfilled in one must forego much of their humanhood in order to bring themselves into accord with God's will. And then the spiritual graces flow. In other words, according to Paul, we die daily, and we are reborn of the Spirit. According to Jesus, it is necessary that we be reborn of the Spirit. Yes, but we have forgotten those teachings, and instead of attempting to die daily to our envy, jealousies, malice, fears, doubts, suspicions, we just go along believing, I lack this, and there's a God, and I'll go to God for it. There's no way to find that fulfilled. As we do learn to realize, nevertheless, not my will be done, but thine, or mold me to thy will, make me in thy image and likeness, let me be reborn of the Spirit, then the spiritual graces begin to flow. But by that time you will find that you've given up so many different human ways that it is possible for the pattern showed thee in the mount to be revealed to you. Now, when the spiritual masters of old revealed great spiritual truths to their disciples, they always found one or two or a dozen to understand them and in turn to demonstrate them. Usually within a short time the movement would be organized. And then here's what happens. Supposing you here as a group have decided to study the message of the infinite way, and you find that there are books available on the subject, and a complete set of these books can cost you around $50 or $60. And then you find that there are recordings available, and that a recorder costs a couple of $100, and tapes cost quite a bit. And somebody comes along and says, oh, we'll buy you these books, and we'll buy you this recorder, and we'll buy you these tapes. And you just sit back there, and you're listening, and you're nodding, and you're agreeing or disagreeing, and nothing at all is happening within you because you haven't put yourself into that at all. We don't have anything like that because we are not organized, and so it becomes necessary that you as an individual or as a group say, I have to go out and spend $50 for these books. Well, first of all, you have to find out whether or not you believe it's worth it to you. And if you read one or two, something takes place within you and you say, oh yes, I want the rest. All right, you have begun. You have begun to die daily, at least to $50 or $60 that you thought was going to be good for something else, and to place it in a spiritual way. Then you want tapes and you want a recorder, and now we have no organization to say, oh here, just come and have them for nothing. Again, you have to decide, do I want them? Do they mean anything to me? Is this a part of my demonstration? And the first thing you know, you're either turned away from it or you're turned to it, and you begin to put yourself into the study. Yourself, your time, your effort, your money, your thought. And now you'll find that you're in quite a different position than if you were just invited into a big building and then at the end a collection was taken up into which you could put 10 cents, which you wouldn't miss anyhow. You would find that you yourself are being called upon to do something. Now we follow that through at every stage of our work. There comes a time when somebody or other says, I'm ready to be a practitioner, or I'm ready to be a teacher. I'm ready to conduct some work. Well, they can't write back to headquarters and say, will you put me on the payroll or will you finance me? Oh, no. If they go into it on their own consciousness, and they succeed or they fail. We at headquarters will give every bit of spiritual help there is to anyone who wants to work, but not one single bit of material help. Each one has to demonstrate their own state of consciousness. Now what happens? Out of these groups, one person or 2 or 3 or 12 come forth and are able to demonstrate our basic principle, which is, I and the Father are one, and all that the Father hath is mine. And in that degree, then, I can say, cease ye from man whose breath is in his nostril, for wherein is he to be accounted of? Then you can say, you can go anywhere you like in the world without taking thought of purse or script, because now you're not dependent on an organization to finance you. You're not even dependent on anybody to help you with healing or teaching. You have learned to go to the seat, the fount, which is the kingdom of God within yourself. Now you are a free and independent individual who has found their oneness with God and is supported and maintained and sustained by the Father within them. Well, now, you see what happens after an organization begins and somebody says, oh, but we'll give you a salary to tide you over and we'll provide this for you for nothing. You never do learn to become one with God and to be self-maintained and self-sustained, capital S, through your oneness with God, through your relationship with God. Now that has happened before. Gautama the Buddha discovered a great principle of life. He discovered some of the greatest principles of life, taught them to his disciples, and they went out and founded wonderful ashramas and did great healing works, did fine things, and then what happened? As soon as it was organized, some wealthy people began to endow the work, and then they began to rely on the endowment and not on their conscious union with God, and the next generation lost the principle. So it was. Jesus sent his disciples out without purse or script. They had a treasurer, yes, because whatever was, shall we say, demonstrated in the way of supply has to be handled by one person if there's more than one person traveling. And so they would have a treasurer, but the treasurer wasn't there to raise funds, merely to care for the funds that came into the possession of the disciples and the master. But actually, the master took the standpoint that I and the Father are one, all that the Father hath is mine, the kingdom of God is within me, I have meat the world knows not of, I am the wine and the water and the bread and the resurrection. Everything is embodied within me, and therefore I need not consult man whose breath is in his nostril. And then, in normal, natural ways, funds came into them, and their ministry was well supported. And that went on for 300 years. The disciples and the apostles and the followers were able to travel all over the then known world and not have angels to support them and not depend on contributions from the wealthy, but to demonstrate day by day that wherever they were, God was, and wherever God was, fulfillment was, and every need was met as they went along. But at the end of 300 years, the work was organized, a church was formed, and the next thing you know, nobody had to demonstrate anything because the church began to pay the priests and the rabbis or the ministers or whatever their titles were, and everybody got on the payroll, and the first thing you know, who had to rely on God anymore? And so they lost their real heritage that they received from Christ Jesus. And that is the opportunity and privilege of demonstrating that the place whereon I stand is holy ground. Where I am, God is. Fulfillment is. All that the Father hath is mine, and I need not consult man whose breath is in his nostrils. As a matter of fact, the Master based his entire teaching around the two words, I am. In other words, indicating not that I need something, not that I will get something, not that I should, not that I deserve, but I already am. I already am the bread. Not I need bread. I already am the bread. Not I need wine or water or meat. I already am. I embody. I include within myself. Well, many, many years before that, in the days of King Solomon, long before King Solomon, the Hebrews knew the secret word I am, and it was so secret and so sacred that nobody was allowed ever to voice it, except the priests, and they only when they were in the sanctuary. The reason for that was that they didn't want the ignorant to make the mistake then that has been made since of having a lot of human beings go around saying, I am God. Nothing could be further from the truth than to believe that man is God, or that a human being is God, no matter how good the human being may be. And so it was that they kept the secret words, I am, locked up, and gave it only to those who were prepared to know that when I say I am, I'm not merely talking of Joel. When I say I am, I'm talking of you as well as of me. For the I am of you is the I am of me. And the minute we know this, and the minute you know this, that there's nothing personal about the I am. It's an impersonal truth that is the truth about everything on the face of the globe, human, animal, vegetable, mineral. Then you have the secret. And King Solomon had this secret. He prayed for understanding, and it was given to him. And so at the building of the temple, it was promised to all of the workers in that temple that when the temple was completed, that the workmen would be given a secret password, and that when they received this password, that they could travel to every part of the globe, any part of the globe, and always receive master's wages, just by possession of this password. Well, of course, before King Solomon was able to give this password to these men, his associate in the work was killed, and the word was never given. And it was only in the 1880s that a man, after over 40 years of search and study and traveling the world and delving into the secret documents all over the world, finally found the secret word that King Solomon was going to give his workers when they were ready for it. And the secret word was I am. And if you knew those two words, I am, you need never again think of supply or lack. You need never again think of happiness or unhappiness or sickness or disease or sin or purity. Because now nothing would ever come into your experience but that which was the experience of God. Now, as I say this to you in a human way, you can see for yourself how utterly ridiculous it seems, because it would seem that now that all you have to do is go out in the world and say I am, and have the good things of the world flow to you, and that isn't true. But if you, as individual students, take into that secret sanctuary within yourself the great password of Moses, of Solomon, of Jesus Christ, I am. I am that I am. I and my Father are one. All that the Father hath is mine. The very place whereon I stand is holy ground. If I made my bed in hell, God is there. Why, I already am in the presence of God. Now, if you kept that as a secret and as something sacred within your own being, very soon you would find harmonies coming into your experience. Harmonies of health, or harmonies of supply, or harmonies of companionship. And you'd see that that very term, I am, is magic, spiritual magic. And it draws to you. You have to be careful to fulfill the Master's teaching on the subject of prayer. You must remember that Jesus Christ taught that you must not pray in public, that you must not pray to be seen of men, that you must retire into your inner sanctuary before you pray. And there, the Father that seeth in secret rewardeth thee openly. So when you learn then to pray inwardly, thank you, Father, I am. I am joint heir with Christ and God. I am heir to the heavenly riches. All that God is, I am. The Father has breathed in me his life. Therefore, God's life is my life. His wisdom is supreme. His wisdom has been given to me. His grace, His grace is my sufficiency in all things. Just think, I don't have to tell anybody what I need. I don't have to tell wife or husband what I need. I don't have to tell strangers or friends or relatives. Inwardly, I have to realize God's grace is my sufficiency. All that the Father hath is mine. And as you learn to live in secret and sacred prayer, the divine harmonies of God unfold in your experience. And you see, with that, you can begin, if you have a child or grandchild, or if you have a friend who is sufficiently impressed with what they've witnessed in your life, you can begin secretly and sacredly to teach this to them. And so this word can spread, and it can go around the world, and it can lift the world and save the world from the very things that heretofore has wrecked the world, and that is a lack of reliance on this infinite invisible. Now you see, supposing then that I, in my particular work, go around the world as I do, and I teach this to small groups like this, and other things which you know about in the books and recordings, and I say to you, don't make a public display of it, don't parade it, don't go out trying to convert everybody to the infinite way, don't go out and proselyte. Keep this locked up within yourself. Be selfish with it until it begins to show in your life, until it begins to demonstrate, and then only one by one begin to share the secrets with others. Then you'll find how wonderfully life unfolds to us. But you know what breaks it? Whether in this generation or the next or the one after, somebody comes along and says, oh, nobody's collecting any memberships here, and there's 1 million people reading, and if we just got $1 a year from each one, we'd have $1 million a year. And then you see you're dependent on $1 million. And then it's wrecked again. And that's what's happened in every single case. The generation who were taught by the masters were all free men. The Christ makes them free. They have no longer a dependence on man whose breath is in his nostril. Always they have the realization the kingdom of God, fulfillment, is within me, and they learn to live that way. And all good flows into their experience. But you remember, the Master, after he was in the ministry, was led up to a mountain, up to a wilderness, and there he was tempted to demonstrate. He was tempted to demonstrate food. Well, you know, that would have wrecked his entire ministry had he indulged that temptation, had he tried to demonstrate supply. And so it is with each of us. The very minute we get along spiritually, somebody or something comes along, some devil, to tempt us with a nice big salary or a nice big income or a nice big gift, and all of a sudden we're dependent on it or them instead of what we're dependent on now, the kingdom of God within ourselves. You must remember that in our health matters, we have all been dependent on pills and powders and plasters and surgery, and that in proportion as we have come into a spiritual awareness, our dependence on these things has lessened, and I know the material medical world would be shocked if it knew how many million never had one of their shots, nor had one of the diseases that the shots are supposed to protect them from. They just couldn't believe it, and they wouldn't believe it, because their reliance and dependence is in the thing. And our reliance and our dependence is in the invisible. So it is. There are certain specific principles in our work which do not make sense from a human standpoint. Let me give you another one. Ever since the fall of Adam, even though you don't consider that as a factual happening, you do accept it as at least an allegorical happening, because behind all myth and behind all allegory and behind all fairy tales there is truth. You couldn't build a fairy tale except that it was built on some truth. You couldn't build a myth that would last unless it was built on some truth. And so behind the story of the fall of Adam and Eve, there is a truth. And the truth is that at some time in human consciousness, we accepted two powers, the power of good and the power of evil. The good we wanted and the evil we wanted to get rid of, and probably for that reason we got more of the evil than we got of the good. We're too busy trying to get rid of the evil, and so we made it real. Now, we, in the infinite way, say that our healing principle is based not on God healing anybody. We really don't believe that God heals anybody at any time, or that God ever has healed anybody at any time. We don't believe in faith healing. We don't believe in what is called God healing. We don't believe in the power of God over the devil. We don't believe in the power of good over evil. We don't believe in the power of truth over error. We don't believe in the power of right thinking over wrong thinking. Our principle is that since God is infinite, that all there is the good which is God. And if you're speaking of power, then that means there's only one power, and that must be God power. Else you can't have an infinite God. Now, if you have an infinite power of God, what about evil? Well, now, to human sense, there's plenty of it. There is sin, disease, death, lack, and limitation. According to spiritual consciousness, there is no power in anything that the world calls evil. Where do we go to get proof of that? Well, of course, we could cite our own healing work as proof of that. Or we could cite the history of Christian Science and unity that can prove that for 70 or 80 years infection and contagion never spread among their members, and they had no material remedies to prevent it. We can go all the way back to Jesus Christ and prove that he went right up to a leper and touched him to prove that leprosy had no power. We can prove that he said to an impotent man, a crippled man, "What did hinder you? Pick up your bed and walk." He didn't say a word about God's going to come down out of his heaven and heal you. He merely says, "What did hinder you?" In other words, you're sitting there because you're believing there's a power other than God, but there isn't. If God is one, if God is infinite, God is the only power. So come on, get up. We find that Jesus did a very strange thing. He went up to a man who was blind and healed him by putting spittle on his eye. Now, do you think that Jesus thought spittle had any power, or did he feel that blindness had no power and that even spittle could overcome it? And that's the answer. He didn't believe there was any healing remedy in spittle. He knew there was no destructive element in a condition called blindness. And his idea was, come on, open your eyes here. Even this spittle has got enough power to make you see, and that's nothing. So it is, our healing work is all done from the principle that since God is infinity itself, infinite power, infinite good, infinite presence, that there is nothing else. There's no reality to any appearance that testifies to any contrary condition, and all our healing is based on that work. Now, when we present that principle to an audience who isn't familiar with our writings, can you imagine how ridiculous that must seem? We had an experience with a man close to death who turned to us for help. And the thing that we were led to say to him was this: there is no law of disease. If God is infinite, and if God is the only lawgiver, then God must be the only law. Then there can't be a law of disease. Oh, he said, well, that's astounding. I said, yes, it is astounding from a human standpoint, where we all know how many laws of disease there are. But let us understand this. Have we accepted an infinite God? Do we believe that God is power? Then we must believe that God is infinite power. So there can't be any power in disease. Do we believe that God is the only lawgiver and the only law? Then we have to accept that God is an infinite law, and so there's no room for any other law. There can't be a law of disease. You're trying to cure disease. You won't succeed. You can't even get God to cure what doesn't exist. And so it is that, the man was healed in 24 hours. And that man today is one of our very good workers. But I bring this out to show you not the healing, but what healed it. The realization there is no law of disease. I can't say that to a strange group of people. I can't say that, for instance, to an audience in which sometimes there are ministers who have been taught that disease is a very good thing because God sent it, or a group where there's apt to be doctors who have devoted their whole lifetime to looking for laws of disease. And so it is that I have to say these things in groups like this, where some of you at least have experienced a healing through our work and can say, well, at least you've shown us. Now, it is in the same way, I'll speak to you, that we have had tremendous success with the healing of mental cases and in prison work. But we work from the direct opposite standpoint to what doctors work with in their work. In other words, we never, under any condition or any circumstance, take into consideration the mind of the patient. We don't care what wrong thinking he's doing or what sinning he's been doing or what his background is. We don't care how he got that way. We pay no attention to that patient at all in our healing work. We don't try to correct him. We don't try to change his thinking. We don't try to find what caused the disease. We ignore everything that has to do with a sick person or a mentally ill person. And then what do? Well, in our period of meditation or treatment, we go within ourselves and we ask the question, is God infinite? Is God the infinite intelligence of this universe? Is God the infinite mind of this universe? Is God the law unto anything and everything in this universe? Is there anything but God operating in individual consciousness? And the answer is, oh yes, there's one thing. That's what's causing all this trouble. There's the belief of good and evil. And we don't accept that. We go back to the Garden of Eden and realize, no. There is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Nothing in and of itself is good or bad. Only thinking makes it so. Believing makes it so. We go back then to the infinite nature of God. And then, since God constitutes all there is of individual man, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. Since we are heirs to all that God has, joint heirs to all the heavenly riches, then it necessarily follows that anything, any condition that this individual is suffering from is no part of him at all. And he's not responsible for it, and you'll never heal him by trying to get near him. The answer is that this universal belief of good and evil has been fastened on this individual, and now we are removing him from it. We are taking him out from under it and realizing, my son, the grace of God is your law and nothing else. Man's belief can't touch you in the face of the realization of God as one, as being, as your being. And you will marvel as you witness the results. I have a most beautiful letter from the associate warden of a prison saying that if only a few men in the community would do for the men in prison what I have done, that they would have no prison problems. And what do you think it is that I have done? So very little that you'll smile at it. I have never condemned these men or criticized them or judged them or tried to reform them. I've merely said to them, whatever you've done because that was your environment and experience at the moment, but let me tell you a secret about yourself. You're as much a part of God's kingdom as I am. God's rain falls upon the just and the unjust. Forget this background and past that you're hounded with, and remember your true identity. God made you in his own image and likeness. And you ought to see the change in those boys. You ought to see the self-respect, the cleanliness, the conduct. The minute they stop thinking of themselves as they have been taught to think of themselves, as lost members of society, as criminals. And all of a sudden they begin to realize, why, that never was my true nature. And then they'll admit this, you know, I never did want to steal. I never did want to do wrong. I just didn't know how else to get the things that were necessary. And then they'll acknowledge that in their own inner being, there's been a conflict against their own outer conduct. Now they're free. And you'd be surprised how quickly they go free from the prisons, because once that change is recognized in them, it seems that even the parole boards and the governors can feel the change in them, and they are set free. You see, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. But you have to be sure that you are knowing the truth. Now, there is no truth about you or me. There's no truth about man. There's no truth about this world. Truth is a synonym for God, and so the only truth there is a truth about God. And when you are treating or healing or praying, whatever name you use for it, don't take into consideration the person for whom you're praying. Don't start to know any truth about them. Know the truth about God, because since God is infinite, that must include you and me. Then the truth about God is the truth about you and me. It is just the same as if you were to let us talk about this desk, and I would say, how strong is this desk? And then your answer would be, well, what's it made of? If it's made of pine, it is so strong. If it's made of oak, it is so strong. If it is made of mahogany, it is so strong. That's right. The desk of itself has no strength. Its only strength is the strength of the substance of which it's made. So it is. The beauty. Has the desk any beauty? No, the beauty is in the wood of which it is formed. So with you and me. We have no qualities of our own. We have only the qualities of the substance of which we were made. And what is that substance? In the beginning, God. The Word became flesh. And so it is that the substance of your mind is God. The substance of your intelligence is God. The substance of your health is God. The substance of your body, even your body, is the temple of the living God. And you see what got Adam into trouble. He got ashamed of his body. He tried to hide it from God because he thought of good and evil, and so he was going to hide. But in the sight of God, a body isn't evil. A body is the temple of God, and that must be the full and complete body. Once you begin to think in those terms, my body is the temple of the living God. My household is the temple of the living God. My family is the temple of the living God. My business is the temple of the living God. Ah, God is the substance then of everything of which our life is composed. Then what is the quality and what is the quantity? Infinity, eternality, immortality. Only though, if you can agree that God is the substance, the activity, the law of all that is, can you see with a single eye that God and God's creation alone is real? And then what about all the sin, disease, death in the world? That is the man-made mental creation which comes from the basic belief that there is both good and evil. You will find that as you accustom yourself to the idea that there is not good and evil, there is only the activity and presence and substance and law and energy of God, that you will never again have judgment of that which is in this world. You will never call anything evil. Do you remember the story of Peter with Cornelius? Peter had this dream. Well, to begin with, you know, Peter was a Jew. Many people think he was a Christian. He didn't become a Christian until years and years and years and years after the crucifixion. He was a Jew. And he insisted on staying a Jew even after he was a disciple of the Master, even after he was one of the disciples that went out into the world after the crucifixion. He still insisted on being a Jew. Why? He observed all the Jewish rituals, the Jewish holidays. He wouldn't eat the meat of pig. He wouldn't accept anyone into his association who hadn't been baptized, hadn't been circumcised. Oh no, he was a Jew, and he was going to continue to be one until he had this dream. And in this dream, a sheet is lowered, and in it is a pig, and he's told to kill it and eat it. And then Peter shows what a good Jew he is. Oh no, I'm not going to eat the meat of pig. That's filthy. 3 times he has the dream, and then the voice of God speaks to him and says to him, call nothing filthy that God hath made. And that made him a Christian, because the next day when Cornelius, a servant, came to him, and Cornelius was one of those filthy Gentiles, remember, and said, will you come and teach us about the Holy Ghost? Peter would have said no the day before. Oh no, we weren't sent to the Gentiles. We were sent only to the Jews. But now Peter sees, call nothing unclean that God hath made. And so now even Cornelius is clean enough to learn about God. And so Peter does go to Cornelius and to his band, and the Holy Ghost descended upon them, and many were converted. Why? Because in the consciousness of Peter, there was no longer Jew or Gentile. There was no longer good or evil. There was no longer pure and filthy. Now there was just one. If God created Cornelius, he's good enough for me. If God created pigs, that's good enough for me. And from then on, Peter and Paul were of those who fought with the others, who still insisted that this new teaching of Jesus Christ was not meant for the world, but only for Hebrews. And Jesus' brother James, to his last breath on earth, never would consent to going out preaching to the Christians, to the Gentiles. He was one of those who insisted to the last that this teaching is only for those of the household of the Jews. But the others caught the vision of Christianity. Now, you see, we may belong to Christian churches, but that doesn't make us Christians. any more than Peter being a disciple of Jesus Christ. That didn't make him a Christian. He only became a Christian when he lost the sense of good and evil and saw that all that existed was God and God's creation. So with us. We never will be Christians while we have in our own mind a distinction between Jew and Gentile, white or black, pink or brown, while we have distinctions. That doesn't mean that there aren't different levels of society, but it means that each of us in our innate selfhood is the offspring of God. For God made all that was made, and all that God made is good. Now, you in your individual experience are going to be tempted as Jesus was. You are going to be tempted. Someone is going to tell you they're sick, they're sinning, they're poor, they're unemployed, they're suffering from the depression. What happens to them depends on what happens in your consciousness. If you within yourself can say, I recognize no distinctions, nothing good or nothing evil. I recognize neither good nor bad, up nor down. I recognize only God as the activity, as the supply, as the substance and the law of all that is. And then you'll find all distinctions are wiped out in your mind, and disease is healed. Disease fades right out of the picture in proportion as you individually. That's why this can only be taught to one person. It has to be taught to you, and you have to put it into practice. This isn't a thing that there's a mystery in the air and then all of a sudden 1,000 people are well. No, this is an individual experience where some one of us, one with God as a majority, some one of us must behold that there's nothing filthy or unfilthy, that there is nothing good or bad, that there's neither Jew nor Greek, bond nor free, that we are one in Christ Jesus, and God is the only law, the only cause, the only substance, the only being, and that one that holds rigidly to that in the face of all appearances brings harmony wherever he travels. If I be lifted up above the belief of good and evil, shall draw all men into their harmony. So as we learn this one by one, some of us it takes a short time to learn it, some a long time. So you will see that the infinite way is made up of principles. Many such principles as I've described to you today, and many, many more. And as you learn them and put them into practice, you can demonstrate them. Now, reading about them will not demonstrate them for you necessarily. Here and there some demonstration may take place. But on the whole, it's safe to say that just reading the books or hearing the tapes will not make your demonstration, except that if you keep it up long enough, it'll change your whole consciousness. But actually, to come to it in a reasonable length of time, you must do something about it. You must take these principles and put them to work. As these principles were revealed to me, I healed. I stayed 16 years in the healing work. I didn't teach. I had to be awfully certain that these principles were correct, because some of them are very contradictory to many other things that are known even in metaphysics. But at the end of 16 years, there wasn't any question anymore about the effectiveness, because people were coming to me from all over the world, and there wasn't enough hours in the day or night to take care of them. There were enough telephone connections on my desk to be able to talk to them all. And that was the proof that this was true. Then I could begin to teach. And it was then that the book was written. The Infinite Way was only written in 1946. A voice spoke to me in 1945 and said that 1946 would be my year of transition. I really thought it would mean I was going to die. I wasn't quite ready for that. But it didn't mean that. It really meant what it said, a year of transition into a new consciousness. And it was. And in that consciousness, the Infinite Way was written. And in 1947 it was published. And by that time I was expecting to have the joy of just sitting in an office 5 days a week and doing some healing work and having nice weekend vacations. Well, you see, we haven't quite got around to those yet, because the activity began to come from here, there, and the other place, prove itself in many parts of the world. And so I've had to travel the world as I am here, telling just what I'm saying to you. The only reason I don't need notes is because these are principles that I've lived with now for 28 years, and I know that they work. They're ingrained in me, so I can tell them to you and repeat them to you over and over and in 1,000 different ways until sooner or later they will register within you. But remember, the Bible is really our foundation, but not the Bible as it is taught theologically. No, we don't go along with that at all, probably because I know so little about it. The Bible to us is an authority because of what I have witnessed of certain passages and the demonstration. For instance, this story that I just told you of Peter. Now, you see, to me that becomes a principle. That becomes a principle now. I don't care the why or the wherefore. To me, Peter has revealed that as long as I believe there's good and bad, filthy and unfilthy, I'm back in the Hebraic days. I don't want that, because I have seen through the example of Jesus Christ that he has a teaching which can save the world. So I don't want to be a Hebrew anymore. I want to get beyond it. How do I get beyond being a Hebrew? By giving up the belief that there's filthy and unfilthy is one way, giving up the belief that there is good and bad, and keeping closely to one principle. Well, in the same way, one day I finished a class in San Francisco. I was driving to my home in Los Angeles, and a voice spoke in my ear and said, "He performeth that which is given me to do." Now, I had never heard that passage, and at the moment I wasn't sure whether that was the Bible or Shakespeare. It's so easy to get those two confused. The same wisdom seems to have come to the great ones in the Bible and to whoever wrote Shakespeare. But I always carry a Bible that has a concordance in the back, and so I drew up at the side of the road and opened it, and there I found two passages. He performeth that which is given me to do, and he perfecteth that which concerneth me. Now, I didn't know what meaning they were to have in my life, but I did know this: it's a message to me. Something is going to come into my life which may seem to be a great responsibility to me, and I'm to know in advance that whatever it is that's given me to do, he performeth it. So I'm not to fear and have no responsibility. And I went on home. I was only in the house 20 minutes when the phone bell rang and Hawaii was on the phone. "Can I come at once? A man dying of heart disease. There's no hope of saving him, and his wife has asked his consent to have my help." Oh, instantly came into my thought, he performeth that. It's all right. God's all the way over there in Hawaii long before I can get there. Yes, I'll come. But inwardly I had peace because the work is done. Before I started for Hawaii, another call came from another island in the Hawaiian Islands. Again asking, do I ever come to the Hawaiian Islands? Yes, I'm on my way there now. So when I got to the Hawaiian Islands, I had two patients. But one of them, the one with heart disease, was at the boat to meet me. And the other one had been moved from her island over to Oahu and was in bed at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel waiting to be helped. And one of them within 3 weeks was healed, and one within 5 weeks was healed. And there I saw again. Now I've got a principle that I can never forget. The responsibility is not on my shoulder, on the shoulder of truth. As long as I know truth, it will do the work. He performeth that which is given. And from that time on, it makes no difference what kind of work has come to me or how many hundreds of thousands of miles that we've traveled, and heaven knows it's been hundreds of thousands now, in just a few years. and into every kind of country and part of the globe. And always there's been no concern about the main thing. He perfecteth that which concerneth me. There is a He that goes before me that proves the way and paves the way. There is a He. That's one of our great principles then, out of Scripture. There is a He. Now just think what happens when you search the Scriptures and find out that not only the Old Testament, some of the great masters knew it, but just think when you start to study Jesus Christ and find out that the only principle he was completely sure of was, I can of my own self do nothing. The Father within me doeth the work. That's that He again. And then just look at Paul later. I can do all things through Christ. I live, yet not I, Christ liveth my life. Do you see how the Bible then works with us to prove from Genesis to Revelation that there's something greater in this world than you and me as persons? There is something greater where you are than anything human. We call it a transcendental presence or power or being. We call it a mystical presence or power or being. We call it the presence of God or the Spirit of God or the law of God or the life of God. What difference does it make if we were, well, I was, just a few weeks ago, I spoke to 300 Indian children in the Fiji Islands, high school boys and girls. And I had to talk to them in the language of the Bhagavad Gita. But do you think for a minute that the principles were any different than those I'm saying to you? Heavens, no. Thank you. Thank you.